Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm the City Witch, and today we're going to be doing a book review for A Spirit Work Primer, A Beginner's Guide to Streamlined Spirit Work by Nag Loki Savanith. This is what the book looks like, and I have to say I love the front cover. It's very beautiful, and I was really hoping when I read this book that some of this lovely artwork would be included inside the book. But alas, it was not to be. There is no artwork, no doodles, no images in this book whatsoever, except right at the back where the author talks about some spirits they managed to connect to, and they provided some sigils for you to be able to work with those spirits as well. So that is the only bit of artwork right at the back, but the rest of the book is artwork free, which is a bit of a shame in my opinion. So before I deep dive into this book review, I just want to give a warm welcome to all my new followers and subscribers and anyone who tuned in to watch this video. Hi and welcome, and thank you so much for watching and supporting me. How I like to do my book reviews is very simple. I have read the book from cover to cover. While working my way through the book, I made lots of notes, putting them into two lists of positive and negative. I will walk you through all the good, the bad, and the ugly of the book. I will score the book from 1 to 10 at the end and let you know my personal thoughts and opinions on it. I will show you the contents of the book and give you a flip through so you can see what you're going to get if you purchase this book. And I'll let you know if it's good for a beginner, intermediate, or advanced practitioner. And I will end with letting you know if this book made it to my magical library or not, because if I didn't enjoy it, it does not go on my library, and that is a rule of mine. So with all of that being said, let's flip the book over and read what the back has to say. Learn how to commune with spirits. In A Spirit Work Primer, author and necromancer Nag Loki Savanith shows us how to form strong relationships with the spirit world, making these allies accessible to all serious practitioners. Whether you are new to the art of magic or have been studying for decades, this book will prove to be a valuable resource, one that will be referenced time and time again. Step into the spirit world and learn how to develop your spirit senses, how to make offerings to the spirit world, how to safely engage in spirit possession, and how to practice spirit invocation. So let's take a look at the contents so you know what is included in this book. So first of all, this is the new edition of this book. If you bought the older edition, you will only get the foreword and introduction for the old edition. If you bought the new one like me, you will get the originals, so the original foreword and introduction, but you will also get the new ones as well. I do recommend that you read those as well as the introduction to the book, because it was quite interesting and insightful. Also gave you a look at the author's personal practice and how they deal with spirits in the real world. Now, the original foreword and introduction for me threw up some red flags and actually sort of made the author look a little bit incompetent in my opinion. But the newer ones kind of changed that for me, and I could see how the author had grown and evolved and adapted and learned from those experiences. So read them both if you have the newer copy, because it is interesting. And at the end of the day, on our journey, we're all growing, we're all learning, and so long as we recognise our mistakes, that's what matters. But there was definitely a couple of red flags in the original foreword and introduction for me personally that I noticed. So going into the contents, in chapter 1, we have the basics of spirit work. So this is kind of like your introduction to what is spirit work, why would you want to work with spirits, which spirits are safe to work with, and how do you build your spirit team. So it's a really good introduction, and I quite enjoyed that chapter. Then we have chapter 2, the nature of offerings. Now, this was also a really good chapter. Lots of different types of offerings were covered. There was lots of detailed examples as to what the author themselves gives as offerings. I will say that a lot of the offerings are quite generic. And the issue with that for me is that some spirits require very specific offerings, and not all spirits like the commonly given offerings. So common offerings that most people talk about would include things like water, maybe a glass of wine, some flowers, incense, an altar candle, or just a tea light, maybe a bit of artwork. And if you are going to work with that spirit long term, some kind of statue or altar or a little mini shrine built in their name. So that's all good and well saying that, but there are spirits out there that would prefer more specific offerings that is traditional for them. And the only way you're going to know that is if you do some research. So my advice when you get to that chapter is take it with a little bit of pinch of salt, do your research and due diligence, make sure you're looking into the spirit you want to work with and find out what they like and also what they hate, because you do not want to insult a spirit by accident. So just do your research, guys, is all I'm saying there. Chapter 3, spirit senses. So this is about building your spirit senses and identifying the different senses that you have so you know how your spirits are going to most likely communicate with you. So for some people, you may receive visions. For others, it will be a voice in your head. For some people, it will be dreams, or, you might need to visit the astral realm and actually have a chat with your spirit guides. For others, it might be music that suddenly triggers something or presents a message. It might be colours or divination tools. So knowing how you communicate with your spirits going forward is a necessary skill to this type of work. Now, the spirit senses that this author covers mostly are just the clairs. So the clairs are clairaudience, clairsentience, all of that. So the different clairs. There are some excellent books on the topic that cover the clairs extensively and how to build upon your psychic senses and practice different exercises that will help you turn your weaknesses into strengths, recognize what type of psychic you are and where your skills lie as a psychic. So I recommend getting a book on the subject and actually researching it properly and putting all of the exercises to the test and figuring that out for yourself, rather than just read that and think, oh, that's all I need to know, because you actually need to know more than that, guys. And this is not a book on psychic skills, so I'm not gonna score the book down at all for that. I'm just saying it's mentioned, it's talked about, it is something you need to know, but go and actually buy a book on the subject. It's going to be much better, trust me. Then we go to chapter 4, magical invocation, and then chapter 5, magical evocation. If you don't know the difference between the two, it's very simple and there's an easy way to remember the difference. Invocation that begins with an I means inside, meaning that when you are invoking a spirit, you are invoking their essence or a small piece of them or a magical talent or skill of theirs into your physical body, and you channel their energy into your spell work and you become a type of vessel. There are various degrees of that which are discussed in that chapter, but that's basically what that one means. Evocation with an E means to summon a spirit or deity or entity into your environment. So always think E is for environment, I is for inside, and that is the difference between the two. And again, those two chapters were extensively covered and had excellent information in them. Chapter 6, the nature of spiritual pacts. This is exactly what it sounds like. Writing and designing pacts with your spirits, forming contracts, negotiating with them, and actually employing them to do a job for you. Chapter 7, spirit possession. Then we have chapter 8, familiar spirits. So this is the witch's familiar specifically. Chapter 9, spirit keeping. So how to keep your spirits, how to feed them, take care of them, and kind of do, spiritual housekeeping effectively. Chapter 10, isolated spirits. So there are some spirits, guys, which are isolated to a certain location, bound to a certain object or a house or a tree, something along those lines, and they actually cannot travel long distances. They can only go a certain amount of distance from where they are. So my house spirit, for example, cannot leave the house. It's bound to the house. But yet I have genus loci that I work with in the garden that can travel for 4 or 5 miles away from my garden, but then they have to return. And the further out they get, the weaker they get, because they're distancing themselves from their power base. So isolated spirits talks about the genus loci and bound spirits, whereas other spirits, so commonly deities fall into this category. They are not bound by a location or a statue or an object. They can go anywhere in the world they want. Often they can be in multiple locations at once as well, which is how I can work with Hecate and you can work with Hecate at exactly the same time, because she can be in 2 locations at once. She can spread herself. She can go anywhere she likes in the universe. She's not bound by any one location, but yet working with the genus loci, loci, house spirits, hearth guardians, they are very much bound to one location and cannot travel very far. So you could not summon my house spirit to go and work with you in your house because it's bound here to my house. You would have to come here to my house to work with my house spirit. Okay, hope that makes sense. Created spirits, so this is servitors, entities, that kind of thing, and he talks about the difference, how to work with them, how to create them. Again, this is all basic information. There are books that extensively cover this subject if you like what you read and you want to learn more. So I suggest actually getting a book that covers the topic on servitors, on entities, and actually creating those things properly, you know, so it's a full extensive book rather than just a bit of knowledge on it. But again, that was an all right chapter. Then we have spirit houses. Spirit houses is housing spirits, trapping them in bottles, providing a home for them and how to do that, and also how to bind them to certain objects as well, so that they are, you know, under your will or thrall, as it were. And then the book concludes with spiritual self-defense and cleanup, and then a grimoire of thorns. The grimoire of thorns is during the journey, the author encountered some spirits and decided to include them in this book so other people can work with those spirits. And right at the back of the book, which I'll show you in a minute, there are some sigils that you can use to help you connect with those spirits and work with them. Obviously, that could be the author's own personal experiences. Those spirits could be spirits the author created. They say that they encountered them on the journey, but you know, how true that information is, I have no idea. These spirits are not mentioned anywhere else, so obviously take it with a pinch of salt. Make sure you maybe do some divination on whether they're safe to work with for you personally and how comfortable you feel working with them. So I'll just show you right at the back. So here we go. So here we have some of those spirits, and then the sigils given. The author does explain how they will appear to you, what they look like, and then we have some offerings and then some herbs. So this spirit, I hope I pronounce it correctly, Calathanos. The first spirit I met, Calathanos, is the celestial aspect of divine light. He comes in the shape of a young man with tan skin, green eyes and white hair. Cloaked in robes of silver light. His domain is that of commanding spirits of light, imparting divine wisdom, attaining psychic gifts, and exploring the Akashic records. Offerings to this spirit include white candles, floral incense and clear quartz. Herbs include sandalwood, allspice, and any type of mint. So if you want to work with those spirits and give them a whirl, you can. I haven't as of yet, and I'll kind of tell you why later. I may choose to give them a whirl at some point, but right now I don't feel the need to do so. So that kind of covers what you're going to get if you choose to purchase the book. Now, here's my thoughts and opinions. So positives about this book. The book contains some excellent breakdowns on how to categorize spirits, also known as spirit classification. That for me was one of the best things about the book. He extensively goes into the different types of spirits, how to classify them correctly, and therefore understand them and know how to use them in your craft and practice. That bit of information alone made this book worth it. The author advises that you allow at least 30 days to get to know your spirit before you start actively working with them in your practice. This is really good advice. However, it will vary from spirit to spirit guide. So, for example, Hecate for me, I've been working with Hecate since I was 13 years old. I'm now 39, so you guys do the math. But I have a really long relationship with Hecate, and I was able to work with her from the get-go. She required nothing from me. Over the years, obviously, I've built her a temple, a massive shrine. She has multiple altars over my house. She is honoured to death in my home. But when I first started working with her, she didn't require any of that other than just me talking to her. She was really easy to work with, really easy to approach, and, you know, was a joy to get to know. So that's one example of a spirit. Now, A different spirit I work with is Baphomet. Baphomet actually took 4 years for me to build a relationship with him and actually be able to work with him in my practice. I had to wait for his permission. I don't know what it was, there was just a certain thing that I did that he was like, now I'll work with you. And whether it was me doing shadow work or clearing something out of my life, or I made some change that he was happy with, I don't know. But one day he just went, now I'll work with you, let's go. Now, this isn't to say I wasn't building a relationship with him. I was meditating with him every week. I had a candle dedicated to him. I gave him incense, flowers on a weekly basis. I talked to him and I kept asking him, now can we do spell work together? Now can I work with you? And I repeatedly got a no until one day I got the yes. So it will vary from spirit to spirit. So as much as you would like to build a relationship in just 1 month and think it's as quick and easy as that, it's really not, guys. It will vary from spirit to spirit and it will be different for everybody. So as I said, Hecate I could work with from the get-go, but my friend has been building a relationship with her for 2 years and still isn't allowed to do magic with her yet. So it's different from person to person as well as spirit to spirit, and it will depend on your relationship with that spirit. But it's still good information to know. The chapter on spirit packs was excellent. It provides plenty of examples actually on how to create spirit packs. However, I did find this information to be slightly on the basic side. I would have preferred more examples than what was given, and I did feel like there should have been more details on the type of packs and how they can vary from spirit to spirit. The example used in the book also was a spirit pact with Calais. I don't know why the author thought that was a good idea, but I felt like that was just a stupid idea. I would not have used Calais as an example. There are far easier, friendlier spirits to work with than Calais, and give an example to work with one of them, especially the ones that are, commonly known for working well with young practitioners that are new to spirit work. I would have chosen one of those as an example, because let's face it, there's going to be that one person out there that will go, the book told me to make a pact with Calais. So it would be better if the author had actually talked about a spirit that's friendly, easy to work with, not as dangerous as Calais, or not as, difficult as Calais. I personally don't work with Calais, but I know a few people that do, and just like some darker deities out there, she does have a reputation. She also has a very loving side as well, but often you have to get through her darker side first to get to the light and love side, so I've been told. So Calais for me was not a particularly very good example, but the information in that chapter about making spirit packs was really interesting, the different types, what they kind of look like. I wish there was some photos or some imagery given in that chapter to show you what they look like, but there wasn't. One of my spirit packs, for example, is a scroll, which is sealed in blood, and that's with Citri, who is a Goetia prince of, demons. And all he required from me was a simple offering upon completion of why I've employed him to do a job, seal the pact with a bloody thumbprint, which I did, and I basically carefully wrote out the terms and conditions in it, rolled it up and tied it with a red ribbon, which is exactly what he wanted me to do, and then store it on my demonic altar. Now, a pact I have with Hecate is made out of felt and fabric and contains herbs and sigils, completely different to the one I have with Citri. So each pact is going to be different, they're going to look different, they are going to be advised on how to make them different, because some spirits will tell you how they want them to be made, what they want them to be made out of, when they want them made, certain moon phases, things like that might come into play. So you will have to commune with the spirit on how to make the pact. Some of the information I'm giving you is not included in this, but what is given is still good information. Nag does advise repeatedly against the use of white sage in his book, explaining that it does not need to be used, it should not be used, and there are plenty of alternatives, which obviously he gives in this book. That was a big thumbs up from me. You do not need to be using white sage, guys. You really don't. There are plenty of other varieties of sage. There's something like over 700 species of sage. All of them are used for cleansing and purification and exorcism. You don't specifically need to use use the white sage variety. Use a different one. Blue sage is one of my favorites. Purple sage is also a good one. Just do not use white sage. So I'm glad the author put that in here, and that definitely gave him major brownie points in my eyes. There is also a close look in this book at building your spirit senses. Like I said, using the clairs. That is all amazing information. And, you know, while I do think there's better books out there on the topic that will cover it more extensively, what was given in this book was still really good advice, guys. So those were all of the positives. Now for the negatives. And I will warn you guys, there's a lot more negatives than positives. So, you know, strap in, because this could be a long video at this point. So the negatives. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, there are 2 forewords provided at the beginning of the book. The original foreword, so, you know, the one in the original copy of the book, was truly terrible, and it did kind of make the author look a little bit incompetent and threw up major red flags for me personally. So as I said earlier, please read them and form your own opinion. The new ones given, so the new foreword and the new introduction, were much, much better, and I could see how the author had grown, which, you know, again, we all make mistakes. We all screw up in our magical practice. So putting the new one in there and keeping the old kind of made me realise that he is not afraid to show that he's made mistakes in the past. He's willing to correct them. He's learned, he's grown, which is all major pluses in his favour. The chapter on spirit possession was, for me, extremely concerning. The author talks about allowing spirits to possess you, using your body as a vessel, but doesn't provide any effective banishing and ejection techniques for when a spirit refuses to leave your body, which is actually quite dangerous. There are no warnings or safety tips at all provided in the chapter, nor does he advise in general how to remove a spirit invading your body. Those were all like major red flags to me. If you're going to talk about the subject of spirit possession, first teach someone how to protect themselves, how to effectively banish, how to eject a spirit from their body, how to recognize when a spirit is pushing their way in or forcing themselves upon you, and how to deal with that effectively so that you are safe if you're going to allow your body to be used as a vessel. And worse, in that chapter, he discusses allowing more than one spirit to use your body at the same time, which is a major spiritual no-no, guys. Never put more than one spirit inside your body. The human body is not designed to house a spirit long term, let alone 2 at the same time. That was such poor advice and very, very dangerous. And I can't believe he actually put that in the book. He also doesn't explain that not all spirits get along. So if you choose the wrong spirits and they start fighting inside your body, just think of the damage that they're going to cause to your body, to your spiritual vessel, to your aura, to your chakras. You know, the damage could be really permanent, guys. So please don't ever do that. Poor advice. And like I said, even though the chapter was good, there was just things in it that was just, you know, major red flag. So please don't ever do that. Nag repeatedly says he isn't going to discuss or teach astral projection in this book. And yet when you allow a spirit to fully possess your body, for many people, your own spirit will be pushed out. You will have a silver cord attached to you, but your spirit will be pushed out of your body and you will go to the astral. So covering this as a topic actually is quite important. And I do think that the subject of astral projection should have been covered in this book. One of the biggest issues I have with this book is that Nag tells you that your familiar is your pet. Which, as we all know by now, this is misinformation. So with a tiny bit of research, guys, you should all know by now that your pet is not your familiar. This isn't to say that your pet doesn't add value to your practice and cannot help you in your spiritual journey in any way, because that's not true. Your pet absolutely can help you. You can work with animals in your craft and practice. Your personal pets, be it snakes, cats, dogs, whatever it is, they can be included in your practice, but they are not your familiar. There are clear distinctions as to what a familiar spirit is and what a pet animal ally is. So please don't confuse the two. With a little bit of research, you can easily discover what I'm talking about. The author then goes on to say that you can put a familiar spirit inside of your pet, which kind of contradicts what he said in the first place, which is that your pet is your familiar. So if it's already your familiar, why would you put a familiar spirit inside of it? So that didn't make sense to me. More to the point though, yes, you could do that, but why would you want to? Why would you put a familiar spirit inside your pet? And I'm sorry guys, but my dog, he's like my baby. There is no way I'm going to enforce a spirit upon him, which in my opinion is kind of like a spiritual rape, because he can't consent to me putting a spirit inside of him. He might not want a spirit inside of him, and I don't know what long-term damage that might do to my beloved pet. So there is absolutely no way I'm going to do that. You can do that, you could do that, but my question is, why would you want to? So for me, I was just like, no, there is no way I would do that. He also mentions that you can steal another witch's familiar, which also is major misinformation and incorrect. You cannot steal another witch's familiar. This cannot be done because of the existing contract that is forged between the witch and their familiar. So what we know here is that a witch's familiar is either gifted to them by a god or higher being of some kind, or is given to them by an older witch in the community. Once you are bound to that familiar spirit stays bound to you until you re-gift them to another witch or until you die. If you die and you don't gift your familiar away to another witch, that familiar becomes homeless and wanders aimlessly until another witch forges a contract with it, getting weaker and weaker, sicker and sicker over time. Now, all of this is researchable, that I'm telling you guys. With a tiny bit of research, you can discover this. This topic was actually discussed at length in The Crooked Path by Kilden, I think his name is. There is a whole chapter on this subject and all of the misinformation. He kind of debunks it all, gets rid of all the nonsense and tells you exactly what a witch's familiar is. And again, he tells you all of his source material, where all of that information came from, and kind of gets rid of all of the incorrect stuff. So go ahead and read that book if you haven't already done so. But, you know, to kind of challenge that a bit, you cannot steal another witch's familiar. That is quite impossible unless you plan to kill the witch, in which case you are committing murder. So let's not do that, guys. Moving on. In the chapter about astral projection, well, on the subject of astral projection, shall I say, not the chapter, I forgot to mention that Nag advises you to create a pocket astral area where you can keep your witches familiar and, you know, summon them from that space, interact with them in that space, and do spiritual astral projection magic with them. But if you remember what I said earlier, Nag does not teach you how to astral project, and actually goes out of his way to say he's not going to teach that subject and include it in this book. So if you don't know how to properly astral project, how can you create an astral pocket dimension? The other thing is, this technique is actually called Inner Sanctorum, and it is made using advanced psychic techniques and astral projection in combination. Since this wasn't explained properly, I am assuming that the author of this book doesn't know fully what this is for and all of its uses, which is also a concern because you're recommending something to the public, but you don't fully understand what it's for, how to make it, and also how to astral project there, and you're not willing to teach those techniques to the public. So for me, astral projection should have been a topic in this book, and teaching you how to create an astral pocket dimension should have been included as a subject in this, and then gone on to how to put your familiar there and commune with it and work with it in that space. In the chapter on creating spirits, a story was given in this book about his friend who created a servitor without giving it a purpose. At first, all was fine, as you can imagine, until it wasn't. Over time, the servitor turned nasty, and Nag suggested locking it away inside a box, so I'm assuming spirit trap work was employed at that point. Then burying it and even pouring concrete over the top of it so no one can discover it or open the box and let it loose. So I take issue with this because a far better way of handling this would have been to decommission the servitor after they had trapped it, which like I said, I'm assuming they did because they put it inside a box. So they must have trapped it successfully. So once trapped, you could have easily ritually decommissioned the servitor and took it apart, which the practitioner who created it should have been able to do with no problem. Also, as a rule of thumb, never create a servitor spirit without installing a kill switch or a way to stop it during the creation process, and always create them with a purpose in mind. So don't just create a servitor just because you can. And if you are going to do that to test your skill, immediately after creation, decommission it. Don't leave it hovering around to do its own thing, because you are going to experience problems. So as a rule of thumb, give it a kill switch or at least a way to stop it or deactivate it or put it to sleep. Make sure that you have properly bound it to you, and make sure that you always give it a purpose upon its creation. A chapter on spiritual self-defense is provided in this book, and as I pointed out, it is provided right at the end of the book. For me, this actually should have been provided at the beginning of the book, giving you all of the self-defense techniques you need before you start employing some of the other techniques throughout this book. Even in the chapter about spiritual self-defense, there still isn't an effective banishment technique provided in this book. And the author doesn't actually teach you properly, in my opinion, how to deal with the various types of unwanted spirits that you're likely to encounter while working with spirits. This chapter was actually very disappointing for me. It only covered the most basic techniques out there. And I will say, in his defense, he does provide some information on how to deal with an aggressive spirit that refuses to leave your space. He gives you the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, which is also a great way to banish, but it isn't effective in dealing with absolutely everything, and certainly not the more powerful spirits that you're going to encounter, which is why I said there aren't enough effective techniques for banishing spirits given in this book. And there definitely should have been more of them, in my opinion. And I definitely wouldn't have put that chapter at the end. It should have been at the beginning of the book, teaching you how to protect yourself, showing you different techniques, different cleansing and banishing, exercising, all of that should have been given at the beginning of the book. I personally didn't like how most of the rituals and techniques in this book are given inside large paragraphs of information, making them very hard to locate and come back to at a later date. So I do recommend when you're working through this book that you highlight them or mark them in the book in some way with maybe a sticky note or something. And that means it will be much easier for you to find them later on when you want to try those techniques, or if you want to repeatedly do those techniques over a long period of time. This book, to me, was quite disorganized. It has a lot of misinformation in it, and it just felt poorly done. There are far better books out there on the subject. In my opinion, the best one on the market to date is Jason Miller's Consulting with Spirits. I can't recommend that book enough, guys. And would I say this is a good book for a beginner? No. Even though it says on the front cover, A Beginner's Guide to Streamline Spirit Work, this is not a beginner-friendly book at all. I actually think it's more an advanced practitioner book for somebody who actually has worked with spirits for a few years, knows the do's and don'ts, understands all the basics and foundational work involved, and actually can recognize the misinformation in this book and can kind of filter that out and focus on the information that is actually good, legitimate information. Because there is some good stuff in this book, guys, but for me, mostly, there was a lot of misinformation, there was a lot of mistakes, there was a lot of incorrect information, there was missing information. I mean, the astral projection thing, constantly telling you to make a astral pocket dimension, but not teach you how to astral project. That was just silly, in my opinion. And then there was information given that was just flat out dangerous, like allowing two spirits at once to be inside your body and not advising you that a lot of spirits don't actually get along. So choose your spirits wisely in the first place and don't let two of them at once inside your body. That's just stupid. And then not giving you a way to get rid of a spirit inside your body if they refuse to leave. That was also quite dangerous. So there was just things in this book for me that was just red flag after red flag and just a major concern. So I do not recommend this for a beginner. I would say this is more of a maybe intermediate, but definitely advanced practitioner book in my opinion. I can only score this book a 5 out of 10. Mostly because, like I said, there was some good information, but there was also a lot of really bad information as well. And I couldn't give it a higher score than that. I just don't feel like I would sleep well if I gave it a bigger review than that and said it was, amazing, which to me, it's not. There are better books out there on the market, but it does give you another author's opinion and insight. It does cover some good subjects in here. It does provide some good information. The section on actually classifying your spirits was amazing. And honestly, if that is the only reason you buy this book, that bit is worth it alone. So for me, this is a 5 out of 10. I am going to keep it. It is going to stay on my shelf. There are some people in my group that want to read it. So for now, it is going to live in my magical library. However, for many people out there, I do think this book will be a disappointment, which is a real shame. And that is my review, guys. Thank you so much for watching till the end. I do appreciate it because I know this video is quite long. If you enjoyed it, please give me that thumbs up. Click the bell. YouTube will tell you when my next video comes out. If you'd like to offer like, love and support to my channel, you can do that through my Amazon wishlist or my PayPal link. Both are provided. If you wish to contact me with any questions, inquiries, or to book my magical services, you can do that through Facebook, Instagram, X, or via email. All links are provided, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section and I will engage with you all and answer any questions and inquiries that you have. Thank you so much, guys. As always, take care of yourselves and I'll see you soon. Blessed be.